For today's video, we are going to be working on unboxing our Tazer MX Pro. As you can see, we have our accessory box that has our tools and sealant and pedals located within. Then we also have our quick start guide with our charger in this box as well. The battery is shipped separately and you will receive that at the same time. All right, so once we're at this stage, wheels out, all the accessory components out, we want to go ahead and prep the bike to get it in the stand. Easiest way to do this is we will go ahead and get our handlebars set up on top of the box like so. That'll get that out of the way. And then down in front of the fork, we will be able to access our dropper lever. So you can depress the lever and the seat will go up. All right, so from this point, we'll just go ahead and remove the remaining packaging. All right, so some of the things that we'll find in our accessory box are our quick start guide, keys to remove our battery, and then all supporting documents. We'll also have our pedals and tubeless sealant, Allen and L wrench. You'll see here, included those. Shock pump. And finally, our Intense branded torque wrench. All right, so the next step here is we're gonna go ahead and install our rear derailleur. We will use our 5mm, insert into the bolt. Then very carefully, we wanna get just a couple threads started, so typically 2 turns. At the end of my 5mm Allen, you'll see this tab on the dog bone of our derailleur. This tab needs to be above the flat surface of our derailleur hanger here. So in order to do that, we'll rotate our derailleur back as such. Go ahead, start carefully threading that into place. We'll let that drop down to where it contacts, and to ensure that that stays rested where it needs to as we tighten that bolt, go ahead, apply downward pressure to the back of the derailleur and go snug. From this point, we should be able to remove our axle by hand. Get that out of the way, and we'll come back in with our rear wheel. So one thing to help us get this in place is we'll use our knee to kind of hold the wheel in position. We'll take our index finger and our thumb, place your index finger on the front of the derailleur, thumb on the lower cage, rotate that down, and we can pull the rear derailleur towards the back of the bike. This will give us a little bit more room to line everything up, and we do want to line the chain up on the smallest gear of the cassette. So once we've done that, we can let that derailleur drop forward, and from this point, we're going to be watching the alignment of our brake rotor to our brake caliper. Once everything's lined up, should be able to just slide it right up in place. So we'll go ahead and apply upward pressure on that rear wheel, slide our rear axle in from the non-drive side. We'll take our 5mm Allen on our 3-way. Go ahead and start installing the axle. So we'll go ahead and swing this out of the way. It just has one zip tie holding it in place at the moment. We'll want to remove this piece of plastic on the center of the bar. So let's pull that off. And then on the stem, we'll want to remove this sticker here. This sticker gives us an indication of what our suggested torque values are. So we can even go ahead and hang on to that and put that in our manual if needed. We only need to remove the 2 most forward 5mm Allen head bolts. The back 2 will remain in place. We'll remove our 4mm Allen head pinch bolts. We have our primary 5mm Allen head bolt. Where that goes in, you'll see that there's a marking that calls out 0 gap. So that means that that's going to be tightened down to the top surface of the stem. And that will indicate it's going to rest on there like such. All right, so we'll put our bars up into position, hold it up here, and then we'll take into account that 0 gap marking. We'll make sure that's facing towards the back of the bike. We will slide that into place on the drive side of the bike. We'll grab our primary 5mm Allen head stem bolts. We will get those just set into place. Take our 5mm Allen. Just make sure that the clamps are straight. Everything's in its position before we go snug. So we'll go snug, snug. And we will go ahead and install these. So we'll go snug, full turn out. That will give us the flexibility to still allow us to rotate and position that handlebar. There is hash marks on the bars to demonstrate the positioning and lateral symmetry. So we'll go ahead and get that. Make sure the roll is within reason before initial setup. And then again, we'll go ahead and snug these into place for now. Let's go ahead and install our dropper post lever. So this uses a 3mm Allen. As we install our dropper post lever, we want to make sure that we go underneath our cable here. So we'll do that by opening up our clamshell, sliding it between the bar and that cable. We'll let it wrap around and position just as such. Position roughly where you would like it, and then we will just go ahead and snug this gently into place for now. Next order of business is we're going to go ahead and hook up our electronics. So there will be 2 points of connection to address here. So what we want to do to start this is we will go ahead and loosen one turn our display bolt, main pinch bolt on the front here, and then that will allow us to rotate this up at a 45-degree angle. This will give us better access to the cable ports. Inside of our accessory box is an included connection tool. It will be labeled Shimano. And this tool is specifically designed to engage our connectors. So how this works is we'll take our tool with the open slot facing us. We will take our connector, we will position it just like that. So what we'll be looking for here is installing our cable in port 2. So when we're looking at our stem, we'll go 1, 2. So port 2 is where we are aiming. And then we'll be listening for an audible click. So once we hear that click, we know that connection is good and we won't have any issues. So next, we're going to take our cable that comes from the left-hand side of the handlebar. So we'll take our tool, we'll come around to the back of the display. We will be going for port number 1. So we'll line our plug up with port number 1, and we'll be listening for that same audible click. All right, from here, we're gonna go ahead and get our fork set up. So what we'll need to do to get the bike ready to ride is we'll go ahead and put air in the fork. So using our provided Intense branded shock pump, we can go ahead and take our Schrader valve connection. We'll line it up with the Schrader valve cap. Once we get that snugged on there, we can go ahead and start airing our fork up. Good starting pressure here is going to be about 110 psi. All right, 110 psi. So we can go ahead and remove the shock pump from the Schrader valve on the top of the fork. Take our Schrader valve cap for the top of the fork. We'll go ahead and reinstall that. Again, just finger tight here, no tools required. And go ahead and rotate our monitor down. Use our 3mm Allen and just simply snug. So a couple things to take note of. Make sure your brake cable is out of the way, your front brake cable. We'll push the remainder of the cables up and out of the way, and we'll position like so. In your accessory box will be 3 additional zip ties. So these zip ties are what we'll use to finish fastening this plate on. Tighten the zip tie. Again, in position, tighten the zip tie. We're going to go ahead and install our front wheels. So we start this process by removing our pad spacers, removing our front axle. Again, should be able to remove by hand. You'll notice the bikes come packaged with our disc protectors on them, as you see here. As we remove these, we just want to make sure that the hub end caps remain on the hubs and not on the guards. So just make sure before you throw the guards away that those are properly installed on the hub still. Again, using our knee to stabilize, we will line the wheel up in the opening of the fork and then line the rotor up with the brake pads inside the caliper. Once all that's aligned, it should just be as simple as just a little bit of upward pressure. We'll maintain that upward pressure, take our axle and insert. This is a stepped axle, much like a motorcycle. So it will go to that point. Then we'll need to make sure everything's aligned properly, still holding upward pressure, and we should be able to insert as such. With the axle inserted, applying a small amount of inward pressure, we can go ahead and thread that in place. All right, so the next stage of this process is we're gonna go ahead and torque all the bolts of the components that we've installed in this process. So we'll do that by opening up our included torque wrench. Start with the rear derailleur bolt. This recommended torque value here is 8 to 10 Newton meters. So for good measure, we're gonna go to 9. Torque wrench is already set to 9 Newton meters. 2 clicks. So as you can see here, this axle up here on the top calls out for 11 Newton meters. So we will set our torque wrench to 11 Newton meters. 2 clicks there. That is good to go. We'll go ahead and torque our stem bolts. The same stem bolts we used to install, we will set those. So as that sticker that we removed described, the back primary bolts with the 5mm Allen heads, those are going to be torqued to 10 Newton meters. That's good. And same thing over here. So move over to the front of the stem with our pinch bolts here. So this actually requires a 4mm Allen. We'll drop our torque value down to 6 Newton meters and go ahead and give this a torque. So, as you can see on this axle, it has a marking calling out 6 Newton meters. So just like our stem, our torque wrench is already set there. We put our 5mm Allen bit on there. Go ahead, we'll torque this down. We got 6 Newton meters there. So next we'll move to the pinch bolt on the drive side of the bike. So on the same side as we have already tightened the axle, we will use our torque wrench, still set to 6 Newton meters. So the last thing we'll go ahead and torque is actually our dropper post lever. So as you can see here, it is etched with our recommended torque value of 1.6 Newton meters. So we have our torque wrench set to that now. And this uses a 3mm Allen. Go ahead and get that torqued. Let's go ahead and make sure everything's adjusted properly. So just a quick run through the gears. Make sure everything's clean and crisp. Which that looks good. Make sure we don't have rear brake rub, front brake rub. Everything looks to be pretty good to go there. All right, so the next step of business here is we're gonna go ahead and install our battery. So first step here, we'll go ahead and depress our battery door latch. And we'll pull the battery door out. So as we prep our battery for installation, a couple things to note. It can only fly cargo, so you cannot fly with this on a passenger airplane. It is hazardous material, so go ahead, keep that packaging. So if you do travel, you can go ahead and ship this in advance in this packaging. So we'll go ahead, we will get this open. So as you see here, we have our battery, and included in our accessory box is our battery strap. So we want to go ahead and install this. That way it makes the removal of the battery out of the frame easier. So the best way to do this to make sure we have this oriented right, flip the battery upside down as it would lie in the frame. We'll take our battery strap. It's a double loop system, so we'll take the big loop, slide it over the nose of our battery. We're looking for about 1/2 inch here. That'll give us more than enough bite to keep that in position. As you'll see, if I push this button, the battery does not turn on. As the battery is shipped from the factory, they're in what's called sleep mode. So if you push the button, it doesn't turn on, or it's in the bike, your bike doesn't turn on, no need to worry. The only thing we need to do to pull this battery out of sleep mode is hook it up to the charger. So let's go ahead and put this in the bike. So coming in at a 45-degree angle, we'll line that recess up with the tab on the battery base mount. Make sure that's firmly pressed down, and we'll start to rotate that battery into place. So once we're in this position, it should just take a simple, and that will put our battery into position. Now, if we need to remove our battery, we'll take our keys that are located in our accessory box. We will use either one of the keys. We'll insert it into the key lock. It's just a simple quarter turn. Hold that in position. We'll grab a hold of our battery strap, and we can pull that battery out. I like to pull it out a little bit, let the key go back, pull the key out, and that gives us much more room to remove that battery and pull it out like so. So from there, good measure, we will go ahead and reinstall, put that into position, and simply press into place. Now, in order to get our Tazer MX juiced up, there's a couple ways we can go about it. One, we can do this in the bike, or two, we can do this with the battery out of the bike. We will remove our charge cover. This exposes our charge port. We'll take our charger connector, and we will plug this in. Now this will only go in one way, and we know we successfully completed the connection here when the light comes on. All right, so the last step here before we get the bike on the ground is we're gonna wanna install our pedals. So as you see here, we have two pedals, one's a left, one's a right. Our L and our R. All right, so there you have it. We've successfully completed the assembly of our Tazer MX Pro. If you have any questions for anything relating to the bike, feel free to check out our technical videos. If you have any questions beyond that, feel free to reach out to us directly. We're more than happy to help you get set up and dialed in on your new Tazer MX Pro. Thanks for choosing Intense.